Wake up, MF, my friends. Welcome to the Wake Up podcast. I'm your host, Frederick Intonman, but you can call me Freddy Luv. Today I have a very special lady to introduce, Dr. Lalitaa Suglani. Lalitaa is an author, a psychologist, a coach, an international speaker, and trainer, and is also a contributing author in the new Wake Up anthology titled A Woman's Guide to Transformation, Prosperity, and Health. And Lalitaa, you have to be very excited to be amongst such an incredible group of empowered women across the globe. And speaking of globe, thank you for joining us all the way from the UK.
Pleasure.
Yes. Now, you have a lot of titles there. What's going to be the title of your chapter in this book?
So my chapter is called "This Is Me," and it's about the process that's brought me to where I am today, with all these different titles, and where I've come from, and what I've been through, my process, my transformation, and how I've got to where I am. So it's a really interesting chapter, and I think for me it was very therapeutic just to be able to reflect back and start joining the dots up of like, oh, that makes sense. So there was a lot of moments for me, epiphany moments for me while I was writing this as well. So it's been amazing. It's been an amazing experience.
And what your main focus right now in life is psychology, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And how did you get into psychology? I'm really interested. I love psychology myself.
Psychology it's really interesting, and every day we're using psychology in different forms, like through selling, through business, through just talking to people, connecting with people on a day-to-day basis, even with children, bringing up children. You're always using psychology, and psychology is such a powerful tool. And the more you understand it, the more it's all about understanding yourself. It's all about connecting with yourself, and that's why I love psychology, and that's why this chapter of the book as well, it's been so powerful, because it's about the relationship that you have with yourself. And growing up, that relationship for me, it wasn't a good relationship, and that's why so this is where my sort of story unfolds from. So I actually ended up in psychology accidentally. My friends were doing it, and I didn't want to be by myself in college, so I decided to do it. And also I remember going into the taster session, and the one fact that got me to do psychology as well, another influencer, if you like, was when they told me that that dolphins sleep one half of their brain hemisphere at a time, so they don't drown. And I just found that fact really, really interesting. And I was like, wow, so I get to learn really cool facts like that. So that was another influencer that sort of drew me to the psychology. But when I felt like I was at home. And it just spoke my language, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, finally there's something that I connect with. And ever since then I started developing that relationship with myself, because I was almost forced to, because during psychology you are forced to look at yourself, whereas when you're born or when you're put into a certain environment, it's often about everyone else, and there's certain conditions put on you that you have to be a certain way. But actually that's not true. You can be any way that you want to, but you need the tools sometimes to help you understand yourself, and that's where psychology is very, very powerful.
I love it. I love that as well, because as a former professional athlete, you have to learn to break through so many barriers and keep pushing and achieving. And so the psychological state, you have to go right into it. You can't, if you want to succeed and break those through those plateaus. But what are typical fears or anxieties or worries that, in this 21st century, I personally see a lot of chaos. I don't know about you, but is this kind of a commonality you see with individuals right now?
Yeah, fear, anxiety, it controls what people think, or it's imagine have you ever seen someone take their dog for a walk, and their dog is leading them in life, and like, or when they're going for that walk, and not them taking the dog for a walk? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's how sometimes fear is and anxiety is. It's taking them through life rather than them taking themselves through life, or not allowing the fear and anxiety to sort of not connecting with that. Because if you're not aware of your fear or your anxiety, it's going to take you for a walk. It's going to take you through life. But the more you connect with it and understand it, the more that you can manage it. And it is all about managing it. So the biggest sort of fear that I come across over and over again is, what are people going to think? What are people going to think? How are they going to judge me? What will they think of me? But that's all a perception. It's a perception of what they think people are thinking about them, and it's not actually true. So we create stories in our own minds of what might happen or what people will think, and that stops us from living our life, or it stops us from making certain decisions. So we're actually like living life for other people, or what we think other people are going to think about us, rather than living life for what we want, because we're not tuned into that side of us. Instead, we're tuned into, what is the environment around me going to think? Because we're after, it's a big thing in this sort of in the century that we're in, where there's this everyone wants quick satisfaction, and it's not about that. So they'll buy a new car and feel good for a bit. They'll buy new jewelry. They'll go out and buy something, or they'll meet new people or go out for drinks, and there's all this sort of quick satisfaction. But actually the true work comes from long-term looking after yourself. It's your health, it's your wealth, it's your mindset, and it all comes from that relationship you have with yourself. It's very powerful.
Those are amazing insights. Wow. So as a psychologist, do you teach people how to reframe their fear, how to reframe their anxieties, and you give them those type of tools, correct? That's kind of my understanding of traditional psychology.
That's right. And that's what makes me a unique coach as well, because in my coaching, I also use my psychology tools and to teach people to manage their emotions, because that's what it's all about. Our emotions are the glue to how we see reality. So if we're coming from a place of anxiety, that's how we're going to see our reality. It's going to come from the anxiety that we're feeling. So it's about understanding, what does this anxiety want? What is it saying? So it's learning to communicate with it, and then also like understanding the irrational side of you, and then coming from that rational side of you, who knows how to nurture you and truly knows what's going on. So it's about developing this emotional intelligence, but your emotional intelligence will be very different to someone else's emotional intelligence, because anxiety to you will be very different to anxiety to someone else. So it's not about just like buying a course online and saying, yeah, I've done the course now, I know how to manage my emotions, because everyone's different and everyone feels emotions differently in their body as well. And it all comes from experiences that they've had. So growing up, you may have said something to one of your teachers, and the teachers really shouted at you and you've been punished for that, and you felt real sadness. Now, every time you are in a similar situation, it triggers that same feeling of sadness. Now, if you haven't gone back to explore that traumatic experience, that emotion is going to keep coming up and coming up and coming up, and it becomes bigger and bigger, just because we haven't gone to the root of where you first experienced it and really understood what that's about. So it is really about managing your emotions and really just tuning into them, because it's so easy, again, to find coping strategies of drinking or drug taking or going out with your friends, keeping yourself so busy, not really spending time with yourself. And I think that's very powerful to spend that time with yourself, but not everyone has the tools.
Is there a specific tool you'd recommend for anyone experiencing overwhelming anxiety right now? Maybe they took on entrepreneurship. Maybe they're in maybe their relationship causes them a great amount of anxiety. Maybe they're an athlete and they have performance anxiety. Whatever the case may be, what is a simple technique to kind of reduce that overwhelm?
I would say take time for yourself. Meditating and journaling are two amazing, amazing tools, but they need to be used in the right way. So journaling is not just about sitting on your phone and typing away what you're feeling. It's literally treating yourself to a nice journal. using pen and paper, because you're using 3 different forms of processing when you're processing through a piece of paper and pen, and you're functioning your creative side of your brain as well. So that's really, really important. Journaling, writing down what is it that's actually going on in your head, and then reading through it again to understand what's happening. Because you may feel anxiety, but your body is reacting to something, because your mind's saying that something's unsafe. So you're panicking, and you're having that anxiety. And anxiety isn't a bad thing. I mean, if there's a tiger in front of us and we have to run from it, if we didn't feel anxiety, our body wouldn't feel the threat of it. So what's happening now is, it's again through evolution, we've still got this anxiety feeling. But what happens is we don't, our mind can just take over, our thoughts can take over. So we can see, what are people going to think about me? And that can then start causing anxiety, because you start to feel the fear of what people are going to think. And that is so much more important than how you think about yourself, because you're getting something from that. You're getting a need from people seeing you in a specific way. So it's about understanding. So journaling is one really, really good tool. But like I said, it needs to be used in the right way. And that right way is reading it, highlighting the key things, and then rereading it and trying to understand and connect with your anxiety. What is it saying to you? Like, have a relationship. Imagine the anxiety is like a little baby, and it's inside you. So you're basically communicating with that anxiety side of you and understanding, what is it saying? What does it want? And then having that sort of that conversation with it, like, I'm trying to give it a rational way of thinking, because anxiety can be quite irrational as well. And the second thing that I said was meditating. So that's really, really important. There's so many YouTube links that you can get online, and it's just finding something that connects with you. There's guided meditations, there's meditations with just music, and it's just sitting with your thoughts and knowing what's going on and just grounding yourself. So every morning meditation is important, every evening, and people say, well, I don't have the time. But you have time for other things, but this is very important. And if you want to overcome the anxiety, you need to give yourself that time. Putting your friends maybe and putting yourself first, and really, even if it's 10 minutes and you're just connecting with yourself, like, what's happening in the day, what am I feeling, what's going on in my body, what am I feeling in my body? Those are really powerful tools, because again, that if you're quite muddled in all this anxiety, it can come out in lots of different ways, like through the relationship with food, through your relationship with your romantic partners, your relationship with your friendships, your career, your wealth. It's all related to what's going on within you, your emotions. So the more connected you are with yourself, the more that you're going to strive and become successful.
What is the difference between fear and anxiety?
So fear is what you think, and anxiety is what you feel. So the anxiety is how you're feeling in your body. So the anxiety can be, a lot of people say that their heart increase, their heart rate increases, and they get sweaty palms as well. And they notice that it gets all fuzzy. And so it's like more of a reactive state. Whereas with fear, it's more of like what you're thinking, what if this happens, or what if this happens? And fear can often stop you from doing things just as much as anxiety, but anxiety is more physical. Fear is more of your thoughts.
Okay. I think that's very useful. A lot of people intertwine the fear and anxiety, and they're actually separate. But thank you for that clarification. And I think individuals probably are very interested as well to know what's the difference between traditional psychology and then coaching.
This is a big question that I get. Everyone's like, "Are you sure?" You know what?
Yeah, they need.
There's lots of different sort of stereotypes around what a traditional psychologist is and what a coach is, and often I find people prefer coaching purely because it doesn't have the stigma attached to psychology and a shrink and someone else. Because psychology is more, I need help, and coaching is more developing. Which to me, I'm using my skills in both very similarly. So for me, it doesn't feel like I'm doing therapeutic work or I'm doing coaching. With coaching though, I can set goals for people, and I'm on their back basically. If the goals aren't done, we explore why the goals aren't done. We understand self-sabotaging behaviors, and we take them to the next level in their business. And it's more personal and business development. So with coaching, there's lots of different factors, but with therapy, you have to let the client guide their own way through therapy. You can't be pushy, and you really sit with that client and you bring in what they're bringing into the session. So it is different, because although both sets have their own goals, you're working very differently with each individual, but just using the same skills, if that makes sense.
Wow. Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You, my lady, have a large toolbox. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's just sitting and listening to people. And when you listen and empathize and understand, and don't judge them, because everyone's got their own story to tell. Everyone's been through lots of different things. And if you're in a place where you're judging them, like, why haven't you done this? But it's not why. It's like, okay, let's find out what's happened this week. Why is it that we've set this goal, but it hasn't been accomplished? Has something happened? Is there like a self or subconscious self-sabotaging belief that's stopping you? So my role is being very authentic with the person, but I also use myself as a tool. So I understand, what am I feeling? Is there a projection here of, because I use a lot of energies in my work as well. So I notice what people are feeling by using myself as a tool. So if I'm feeling, sometimes I got like a knot in my stomach, I'll present that into the therapy, into the coaching, and they'll be like, yeah, how did you know that? So it's more spirituality as well that I do bring into my work, because I think that's very powerful as well.
That's very rare. I haven't. You're putting a lot of stuff together there, so it makes you very unique, and that's how cool is that? And what a shame you're in the UK.
I do calls. I do Zoom calls.
There you go.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of clients all over the world, because I do a lot of international speaking and just going out helping people. My main focus is to help people break through the self-sabotaging beliefs, because that all comes from their inner child, and their inner child way of their conditioned self, which is essentially their inner child. And that's really, really powerful work as well, because when you connect and tune in with your inner child, who has experienced the world very differently, and all your emotions and the way that you your rules, your blueprint in life, how you should be in life, all that comes from being a child. And often what happens is we ignore it and we try and shut it out. We repress all these feelings because of things that have happened to us growing up. And it doesn't have to be, a lot of people think, oh, but I wasn't abused growing up. And it's like, it doesn't have to be abuse. It could just be I've had clients where they've had everything, and they say, I've had everything. And when you actually sit down and break it all up, yeah, they have been given all the financial stuff. They've gone to boarding school. They've done all these things, but they didn't get love. They didn't love the way they needed love. And their parents may have given them love, but they didn't get it. So now they're living their life not feeling good enough. And it's all come back from that inner child not feeling good enough. But they're still attracting that in their adult life, but they're not realizing that it comes from their inner child. So they've repressed their inner child, thinking, I don't need it, nothing's wrong with it, I don't need to talk to it. And then we actually, like in the therapy or in the coaching, we introduce the inner child back again. We understand what the inner child's been through. We give the inner child a name, and we really reconnect you with your blueprint of what's happened, how have you seen the world, because that is still going to be impacting your life now. And it's such a powerful way of working.
I've read many, many, many white papers on the inner child. And is it true? I mean, conclusively, I think everything that I've read, it's the ages between 5 and 7, at least from what I've read, that are really, really impactful on your life. I don't know what your viewpoint is or what you learned, but that was my understanding.
Yeah, a lot of research suggests it is between 5 to 7, but then when you break down the research and you understand the research, it's done on specific people. So it's only been taken from a small sample of population, and that population is usually in America. I'm very careful with what research suggests, because I'm just like the person in front of me, and if they're telling me that they've been traumatized at the age of 8, for example, I'm not going to ignore that because research has told me something different.
Exactly.
About everyone's own experience, and I've done research myself, and I know that it can be sort of not manipulated. I don't want to say that. It's sort of guided in one direction based on what your findings want to be. So you do have to be very mindful over research. But the inner child, yeah, it is usually around I would say around 5 to about 10, because there's a lot of not traumatizing experiences, but there's a lot of experiences that happen during that age that really do trigger the way that you feel about yourself, and it triggers the relationship you have with yourself. And that is really important, because the relationship you have with yourself, if you don't feel you're good enough, if you don't feel like you're worth it, that's going to prevent you from doing a lot of things. And that's where fear comes in, of what are people going to think of me because of what's happened, or the way your blueprint is. Your blueprint is thinking all the time about other people, because that's what you've grown up believing. Because say, for example, you had a mom who's like, dress up properly, make sure you're doing this, make sure you're doing that. And mom might just be doing it because she wants to be presentable. But that child is, how has that child perceived it? How has that child perceived what mom is saying growing up? He's saying that people are going to look at me, and maybe one day he doesn't dress up the way mom has said, and he gets laughed at. And that one day has now traumatized him, and it's made him feel like, see, mom was right. I need to look out now for what people have said. So it's about connecting the dots and really getting down to understanding the person for who they are. And everyone's different. And that's what I love about my work, meeting different people and really helping and getting them to the next stage in their life.
That is incredible. And I want to thank you for clarifying and kind of breaking down a lot of the misunderstandings about psychology and coaching. You clarified that so well. I think I have one last question. Is it true, like, when someone gets in monkey mind, this is why individuals really need to start journaling and meditating and practicing these tools, even if you think it's silly, because the more you let that run amok in your mind, like this, they call it monkey mind, you're actually strengthening your amygdala. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, that's right. Because that, again, is through evolution, and that's we emotions developed after first of all, we had fight or flight mode, and that was the main mode we had. But then emotions came as we evolved into humans. And now it's, if we're not concentrating on that side of us, this monkey side of us, which we try and ignore, because that's where the anxiety, the fight or flight, it all comes from. And if we're not focused on that, it can really harm us. It can really impact on us. And it's not just our mind it impacts on our body as well, because our body is constantly being traumatized by having or going through anxiety when we're not in a threatful situation. So our mind then is developing these thoughts, and we think we're in sort of a threatful situation, and our body starts to react. So people lose weight when they're in very anxious situations. Like, say, if someone's going through something where they think they're going to lose a lot of money, they'll start to become anxious. It impacts on your sleep. It impacts on your neurons connecting during sleep. People then develop coping strategies to sleep, like with medication, drinking, drug taking. But all of these different things, they're not healthy for us. They're not helping us to nurture our mind the way we need to, and nurture our organs. It's everything working together. So it's about using the tools, not just journaling, not just meditating, but also eating well. That's really important. Giving our brain what it needs, giving our body what it needs. All of this needs to work together in order to keep us healthy.
And I think a lot of people, that tends to be, or seem, from the stories they tell themselves, very overwhelming. But it's quite simple, and I think you'll agree, since I'm a coach myself, taking personal accountability is the most powerful thing anyone can do. It just starts with you first.
Exactly. Someone else to be accountable for you.
Yeah. And I think I could talk to you for hours, but I want to thank you so much for being on the Wake Up podcast. It was
Thank you so much.
Really informative. And where can people find more about you?
So that if you go onto my website, it's called www.dr and then my name LALITAA.com. So if you go on the contact form there, send me a message and I will respond back to you.
All right. And for those of you that have dreams or aspirations of getting your word out there, of expressing yourself and publishing and taking your career or even your life, opening new gateways. That's what publishing does. Contact me. Go through. Yeah. I'm on Facebook. You can go to Wake Up Publishing. It's all there. I want to thank everyone, our listeners. This has been a tremendous session. Until next time, wake up.
Yeah. Take care.